Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, December 4th, 2008. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. But this week, it's the return of Michael Tonsmeire, the Mad Fermentationist. Mike takes Steve Wilkes, Andy Sparks, and me through a blending exercise to create new beers that are better than the sum of their component beers. If you're new to home brewing and would like to get into the hobby for the first time, check out our website, basicbrewing.com, where you can find archives of our audio and video podcasts and our DVDs to walk you through basic and more advanced brewing techniques. And you can follow me on Twitter. My username is Basic Brewing, all one word. The 2009 Brewers Logbooks and the Introduction to Wine Kits DVDs are both here. Check out our online store at basicbrewingshop.com to find them. And don't forget to check out our new video podcast, Basic Winemaking Video, where you can find that on iTunes. And you can also find it at basicwinemaking.com. And if you do your Christmas shopping on Amazon.com, please don't forget to click on the Amazon Associate link on basicbrewing.com before doing so. And thanks very much. As always, to those who keep us in mind, especially during this busy holiday shopping season. Well, let's start off with a quick jump into the mailbag. Evan from Morgan City, Louisiana writes in with this. Evan says, I've been trying to spread out my brew day to make more time for the kids. I would set up my mash early in the morning, then lauter and brew at night, leaving me all Sunday to play. I've been noticing some odd flavors in a couple of my beers that I've never had before, almost a smoky flavor. I'm going to replace all my tubing, but was wondering if this may be some enzymatic reaction happening as I'm not deactivating the enzymes. I mash in an igloo cooler and lose about 25 degrees throughout the day. Well, Evan, if you'll remember from our last visit with Kai Troyster in talking about his experiments with a mash tun, the enzymes keep working if you leave them alone for a long time, so you may at least wind up with thinner beers than you want after leaving them in the mash all day long. I'm not sure if the enzymes are to blame for a smoky flavor. I don't know. I don't have any experience with that. What you could do to rule that out is maybe do a mash out after an hour or whatever your mashing period would be, and raise the temperature of the mash to around 170 degrees Fahrenheit. That's around 76 C by adding boiling water until you reach that temperature. This would denature at least some of the enzymes and rule that out as the cause of the smokiness, if you still get the same amount of smokiness. That may have an effect. I don't know. It would be interesting to know if anybody else out there takes a similar strategy to spread out the brew day work. If you leave your mashes for an extended period of time all day, drop me a note and let me know what changes you've noticed in doing so, if any. Sid from New Zealand writes in with this. I was just wondering if you've used the herbal tea bags that you get in the supermarkets. They add a bit of aroma and flavor to the beer and are cheap and easy to use. I use 2 tea bags for a 5-gallon batch. Sid says, I personally throw them into the boil about 60 minutes. So far, I have used a peach and raspberry tea in a Pilsner beer. Came out with a good aroma and a hint of the peach raspberry flavor in the beer. I have no doubt this will fade, but at 3 to 4 weeks, it's still noticeable. Very interesting. We did have a mead flavored with tea bags at Mike Lozano's house a couple of years back when we went to visit him. Very tasty, if I recall correctly, and I would imagine a Pilsner would probably be a good style to try this with. A wheat beer flavored with tea bags might also be interesting. Sounds like an excuse for an experiment, a small batch experiment. Robert from Douglasville, Georgia wrote in. He says, I had my first year hops this year with good yield and have now cut them down, covered them with compost and a few inches of straw. Do you need to water them at all over the winter? I assume they will get some rain, but the last couple of winters here in Georgia have been very mild and little rain. Well, I don't think you have to water hops when they're dormant over the winter. I certainly don't, but it would seem to me that they don't need the water because they're asleep, basically, and you might risk watering them too much and cause them to rot if you give them too much water. I don't know. Sounds like you're doing well with the compost and the straw, and that may keep enough moisture in the ground. I'd just leave it at that. I don't think I would water hops over the wintertime. You may remember a few episodes back when Chris Colby and I were talking about building your own kegerator, and I wondered what the R value or insulating value of a 2x6 was if you used it in making a collar for your chest freezer. And Alan in Rochester, New York, who is an architect, he says, and a Basic Brewing radio fan, says the R value of a 2x6 is approximately 6.2. I don't know if a 2x4 is 4.2. I don't know if it works that way. 6.2 is the R value of a 2x6. So there you go. I figured somebody would know. Thanks, Alan. One more letter before we go into the fun. James from Atlanta writes, I was listening to the show with David Logston of Y Yeast, and he mentioned a simple sanitization test. As I understand it, upon racking to the fermenter, one would siphon off a few ounces of wort into a sanitized container, cover the top with tinfoil. You can tell that James is from the South. Not aluminum foil, tinfoil. Cover it with tinfoil and check in 3 days. What I don't understand is, A, should I pitch a little yeast into the sample, and B, what am I looking for in 3 days? How would I know by checking if I have a problem? Well, I think the point of David's experiment there would be to check to see if you've produced sterile wort going into the fermenter. You don't pitch yeast into that sample because what you're trying to see is if anything will grow on its own. After 3 days, if you look in there and see fermentation taking place, or you see some other kind of thing growing on your wort sample, then you know that is not a sterile wort sample. On the other hand, if you look in there after 3 days and it's still the same, you did a pretty good job of sterilizing your wort there. Of course, this assumes that you've sanitized the container that you're keeping that sample in. Because if you see growth after 3 days, it could just prove that you did a lousy job of sanitizing that sample jar, and maybe you did a good job of sterilizing the wort. Hard to tell. So anyway, if you try that, just make darn sure you sanitize that sample jar well. I've never done that. I intended to do that one day, but I didn't. I hope all that makes sense. Okay. I always look forward to doing shows with the Mad Fermentationist. Michael Tonsmeire is the author of the Mad Fermentationist blog, and he is, I believe, one of the most adventurous brewers in the country, if not the world. I don't know of too many brewers who have played with more bugs or things to ferment than he. I know there are some out there, but I haven't heard from them or had their beers. Hint, hint. Mike sent some of his beers for us to play with, and he led Steve, Andy, and me in an exercise in blending beers. How do you prove your flawed homebrew batches, or how can you get inspiration for future brew sessions? Well, maybe you take 2 beers and mix them together. Mike Tonsmeire, welcome back to Basic Brewing Radio.
Thanks for having me, James.
And here in the studio, we have Steve Wilkes.
James, thanks for having me as well.
And Andy Sparks.
And James, once again, it's a thrill to be here.
From thehomebrewery.com.
Thank you.
Get the plug out before I forget.
Awesome.
And you've got people in your house as well, Mike.
Yes, I have 3 friends, my friend Nathan, Dan, and Diane.
And they don't have microphones, so you're going to have to be their spokesman.
I was planning on just not letting people know that they were there and seeming 4 times smarter than I am.
Too late now.
So we're going to talk about blending, and this is something that you have experience with. Give us some sort of background on what you've been doing as far as blending is concerned.
Sure. Well, I get bored really easily with my beers, and so often if I have a beer that's say a little too sweet or a little too dry, or not sour enough or too sour, I'll take them and I'll blend them. Normally, just like we're going to do tonight, just by the bottle. Maybe I'll finish half a beer and then think of what I want to open next, and just open a little early and blend them a little together, see how it works. And it gives me sort of ideas on how I want to do the beer next time. Maybe I thought it needed more sweetness, but sweetness isn't what it needed. It needed less bitterness. Or maybe I want it to be fruitier, and even mixing it with a fruit beer isn't fruity enough for me. I want it over the top fruit. And so this is a good way to explore the beers that you're making. It also is a great way to enter competition beers. If something is the way you like it, but maybe not sweet enough for the BJCP style, you could blend in a little bit of something, a sweeter beer, get up to what the BJCP likes, and then enter it. Just blend in the bottle.
So it's either a way for you to kind of preview what you would want to tweak the recipe for the next time you blend a beer. Or it could be a way to actually fix a beer that you're not too happy with right then.
Exactly. Or I have a couple of beers there. I've actually blended them, just tasting them out of the carboy weren't where I wanted them, and so I blended them before bottling, which is a good way to save a whole batch of beer if something is either wrong or if something just doesn't taste quite as good as you were hoping.
So are there any rules that you have to follow or that you found useful to follow when you're blending beers?
I think much like your interview with Matt Brindelson, it's important just to maybe start with a beer that's pretty close to where you want it. This isn't something that's going to save the world's worst beer. If you have a beer that's unintentionally infected or way off base, you're not going to be able to save it with blending. It's good for tweaking little things, having a beer that's almost where you like, and then blending in a small amount of a secondary beer that has one or two characteristics that you'd like to impart. I think that's probably the most important thing, and I've found it easiest, at least when I'm starting out now, just to have a beer and blend it with one, maybe two other beers. I know Firestone Walker does 5, 6, 7 beers, and that's great if you've got a big tasting panel and a bunch of really excellent beers, but it's not going to work at home by yourself. Not being able to measure as precisely and getting sort of muddy flavors.
Might make for an interesting evening that you might not remember, but an evening to forget accidentally. We've had people write in and say, I made this IPA and man, it's way, way, way bitter. How can I fix it? Well, and we say, well, you make another beer that is not as bitter, blend them together and see what happens. So it is a way that you can salvage the product of a misguided brew day, I guess.
Yeah.
So what do we start? How do we start this experiment?
So I think it's probably best. Why don't we start with a sip of the beer plain, and then, or how about a sip of 2 beers plain, and we'll see. We'll throw out ideas what sort of blend ratio might work, and we'll blend it up and try and see how we did.
Cool.
Sounds good.
So we're starting off with an Alderwood smoked porter.
That's correct.
Now, how did you smoke it?
So I actually bought smoked malt from a homebrew store out in California that has a couple of different varieties.
Okay.
Whoa. Andy with a generous pour. Now this is just going to be a splash.
This is a splash
just
pour.
a taste. And then we'll
going overboard. I'll make sure
That's
we're
all right.
not going overboard on everybody. I want to make sure I got to taste Mike's beers. He's such a good brewer,
Well, they'll be here afterwards too. So, smells pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely has some of that smoky character. It was Alderwood smoked malt, but to me, it smells more like bacon or just sort of a hickory almost.
Yeah.
Alderwood is most normally associated with smoked salmon.
Yeah, it's using
And this is a sort of tastefully smoked beer, in my opinion. I think it's not, a lot of some of the smoked beers I've had, it just smacks you in the face with the smokiness.
Yeah.
This to me, you guys chime in, to me isn't as smoky as some of that I've tasted, but it is smoky enough that you can taste the smoke.
Oh, yeah, you definitely can taste it. Well, I mean, sometimes it's real subtle, which is also a nice kind of feature, too, but you can definitely taste it in this beer. It's nice.
It's very nice.
So what was the ratio of smoked malts to other malts that you used?
This was about 2.75 pounds of smoked malt in a 3.25 gallon batch.
Oh.
So about 27% smoked malt, but that's just sort of this little store does their own, so it's not necessarily transferable to anything that you might get from say Wireman's. And this was also pretty fresh smoked malt too.
Very nice.
Smoked malt goes in. But I think it's a little on the thin side and maybe a little lacking in sort of that dark porter character. And so we have another beer to try, my Scandinavian Imperial Porter.
Okay.
Now, what makes a Scandinavian Imperial Porter?
I just wanted something fun to call my beer. This one also never carbonated particularly well, so.
So just a splash of this, just to taste.
So this beer sort of had every specialty malt you can think of. It had some heather honey. It had some licorice. It had some cardamom.
Yeah, it doesn't have any carbonation.
Yeah,
or at least no head on.
Yeah, no,
it smells delicious though.
Ooh, it's almost a bourbony smell in my.
It had some bourbon oak in it. Yeah.
Oh well, there you go.
It tastes like a
good
Cadbury chocolate bar with raisins and stuff in it.
And this beer is much sweeter. This beer finished at about 10:30, so definitely on the sweet side. I mean, it's a great beer to split with a couple of people, but we're getting your way through a whole bottle.
Very thick.
Yeah.
It's a good dessert beer.
Yeah. It'd be nice if it was carbonated up a little bit. And, very nice, delicious flavors going on.
Oh man.
So why do you think that it came out as flat as it is?
I think it was a pretty big beer. It sat for a little while in secondary. It used, I think, Irish ale yeast, which I don't know the alcohol tolerance of, but this was up around 11%. And that may have just been too much for the yeast to handle.
You killed it.
Yeah.
So there's really no need to rinse this one since we're going to be blending this anyway.
Exactly.
So now we're going to blend.
So what proportion do you suggest we start with? We start with the smoked porter as a base.
Yeah, I think so. I'd say maybe the smoked porter for 75%.
Okay. Boy, that smells good. It smells
definitely not as intense as the Scandinavian was to start out with, but you do pick up some of the little raisiny bits and stuff that you did before.
It's definitely a little bit more palate coating, a little bit more of that lingering sweetness.
Yeah, it is.
That I think plays off the smoked very nicely. I mean, almost sort of like like a smoked dessert or something like that. Grilled fruit over a smoky fire.
I have to say, I think that this is better, than the sum of its parts, or the sum of its parts.
Yeah.
This is. I'm surprised. There really is a big difference, and this really is better.
It's 1 and 1 equals 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think one of my friends just pointed out that he thought that lingering little bourbon character and the smoke go really well together. That sort of smoked whiskey sort of.
Yeah, that's
thing.
a good point.
And I think it tastes more like the porter that I was aiming for, more of that dark fruit, more of that complexity, and not just sort of smoke, which was what the smoke porter on its own. It wasn't that smoky, but I didn't think there was much else besides that. Yeah,
it smells like like an old Rasputin, Russian Imperial stout, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Well, mine's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, Andy didn't like his at all. It just disappeared.
The vote here is 2 of my friends really liked the blend, and 1 thought that the Scandinavian porter was overpowering and sort of walked all over the smoked porter, even at that sort of low ratio.
I could see maybe turning it down another notch, just a hair lower, because it definitely it added a lot of body and sweetness to it, and it didn't maybe need quite 100% of what we added, but maybe if we had put in a little bit less.
Yeah, the smoke.
It was much better beer though.
The smoke, in my opinion, got lost, sort of. toned down more than what I would like, but
Yeah.
still a very, very good beer.
And so if that was blend one, and we were doing this longer, maybe we'd back it off to 20% or 15%. But you can sort of get the feeling that if you had enough of the beer, you could keep doing it until you sort of honed in on exactly the ratio you wanted.
Andy's doing it again.
We're doing that exact thing.
Just do a splash.
Yeah, we still have 100 mils left of the original
the smoked porter,
the Alderwood porter. So we're just going to put a splash of the Scandinavian in this time.
The smoke is much more prominent now.
That's just my lucky strike.
The body's picked up a bit though.
Oh, looks like a milkshake.
Yeah, boy.
Yeah.
Good job, Michael.
Yeah. Well, I think that tells you that trial and error is definitely a part of the process.
Yeah. I think it's a good idea like this to get a bunch of people together and people with different palates, people who are going to, look for different things in the beer, look for, different flavors and different balances.
So what's next, Mike? What's the base beer that we're going to try next?
So I think the next base we were going for is the Funky Old Ale, the FA.
The Funky Old Ale. Is this an old ale that is funky?
An old ale with Brett.
Oh, okay.
It finished around 10-10, which is pretty damn dry for something called an old ale. And then we'll blend it with the Wee Heavy, which finished pretty sweet.
Ooh, that smells good.
Well, I don't think everybody in the world would say that, but it smells good to us.
Yeah.
Woo.
Yeah, it's very funky. It's very dry.
Woo.
I haven't. But my friends are very much enjoying the aroma. But it doesn't smell like an English beer at all. I mean, this is almost a Flanders Old Bruin at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it doesn't quite have the sourness, but yeah, I mean, it's very funky. This beer is more than 2 years old at this point. Yeah.
Wow. It's pretty astringent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I think, I mean, it's the oak and it just finished so dry.
Yeah, I'm enjoying the smell of it more than the flavor.
Yeah. And so why don't we try a little of the Wee Heavy and see how that might balance it out?
Some nice fruity aromas there.
Yeah. I had maybe some
very grapey.
Yeah, grapey is that's about what I was going to say. Very grapey.
This one was a party guile brew with a couple of friends, and it was pretty much every malt. It was maybe 11 or 12 malts. Just sort of everyone brought what they had, threw it in, and then we aged it on some oak wood soaked in cognac, which may be where some of that fruitiness is coming from.
Tasty beer.
Wow, that's sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very sweet.
So this one finished about 10:30, whereas the old ale was 10:10.
Wow.
Okay.
So one would argue that maybe for my taste, the Wee Heavies may be a little too sweet. I wouldn't want to drink too much. It's a delicious beer, but as far as being a drinker,
it's almost like a port wine.
Yeah, exactly.
A little bit.
Well, this Imperial Porter was like that too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
intensely sweet and had that thick syrupiness that leads you to the dessert theme.
So
nice. I like the Wee Heavy a lot.
So what do we want to be the base beer in this?
We're having that exact debate here. It's up to you guys. I mean, this is one that could go either way. To me, I think that almost we have to make the Wee Heavy pretty close to 50-50 either way, or it's going to be too dry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And that the Funky Old Ale is so astringent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That I think that it would the characteristic.
Dominate.
Yeah, it takes more toning down than the sweetness would take toning up. If that makes sense.
Do you want to try 2-1 Wee Heavy to Funky Old Ale?
Yeah.
Or 3-1?
Well, we can try. Why don't we try 3-1? 3 parts Wee Heavy, 1 part Funky Old Ale. We can always up it. If we need more funk in our old ale or in our Wee Heavy. I'm losing track.
You can definitely still taste the funk from the old ale, but it's definitely much more.
Ooh.
Oh yeah, you can smell it on the nose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It's interesting. It's different. I don't know if I like it.
Hmm.
You know, of course we haven't tried the other blend yet, but going the other direction or with more.
I'd pay $1 for that.
I definitely like I like the smell of it better.
Mm-hmm.
And it really toned down the astringency. It might use a tad more funk. You think?
You think?
Or what are you thinking?
I'm kind of thinking a little more body.
A little more body?
Yeah. But what about you, Mike?
I think it's two sort of different visions for the beer. I mean, you can have a wee heavy that has a hint of funk in it, or you can have more of the old ale and have like a funkier, almost Belgian-like beer. And that's one thought. If we want to go more towards the Belgian beer, we could open, say, the Berliner Weiss and add a splash of that and make something more along the lines of an Old Brewing.
Oh. Yeah. So you're talking, is this adding a third beer?
A third beer, so maybe do 50-50 wee heavy in Flanders, and then, I don't know, maybe 25% on top of that of the Berliner?
What do you think?
Sounds pretty crazy, but I'm worth it. It's worth a try.
Well, first of all, we need to taste
let's taste the Berliner.
Mm-hmm. And talk about the Berliner Weiss style, Mike, for those who are not familiar.
Sure. You've actually had this beer before. This was one of the beers on the hopping show that we did a while back, but with a little more age on it. This is a beer that's, very simple to make. It was just a German Pils and a German wheat malt, and then I did a decoction with the hops, and I didn't boil it, and I just pitched the Y-yeast Berliner Weiss blend. And I was really pleased with the way it came out. It's very sort of light and easy drinking, and
as I recall, it was kind of a lemonade-y kind of.
Yeah, I'm really amazed by how clear this beer is. I mean, the last time I opened one, it was pretty hazy, but it's clearer than Budweiser.
Yeah,
and a similar color, really. It's very light.
Yeah,
it's beautiful.
It's hard to make a beer too much lighter than this. I mean, Pils and wheat and no boil.
The lemon characteristic in this is killer.
And the lemoniness doesn't come from lemons, right?
No. It's either the lacto or the breath that's in there.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a
very refreshing beer.
Yeah,
no kidding.
Great summertime beer, yeah.
It's a good palate cleanser.
Yeah,
in between all these big and funky beers.
So does everyone think this would be a good addition to the previous blend?
Why not?
Why not?
Yeah, let's try it.
Yeah.
And do we want to just try like a 1-to-1-to-1 of all three of the beers, or?
Yes. Let's start there.
Yeah, just make it easy.
Yeah.
I find the aroma pretty mild.
Yeah.
But very pleasant.
Very pleasant.
Yeah. The aroma for the Berliner Weiss to me wasn't as pleasant as how it tasted. It was just a little too barnyardy for me. But this kind of rounds that out a bit.
And the palate is still very light, but it's not astringent at all. It's a little bit sour, but I'm not sure I'd call it necessarily a sour beer like you might expect.
This is pretty quaffable.
Yeah, it is.
It's got a real nice balance between all the different things that we're talking about, the sourness and the sweetness and.
Oh, that's delicious. That's very easy to drink.
Yeah, I got to admit, I thought that this was going to be awful, but it's not. And the color is lightened up several shades, obviously.
Yeah. That's the fun thing about this is you're only risking a couple of bottles, so even if it is terrible, you haven't lost a whole batch, trying to make a sour Berliner wee heavy.
Which only you would make, I think.
After trying this, I might make it.
If the Germans had won World War II, that's what we'd be drinking.
But that's the thing. I don't know if you could make this without blending it because of the way these come together, right?
Yeah, well, that's true. All the different bugs and... Yeah, what would if you tried to ferment something like this, it would ferment all the sugars out of the wee heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you blended them post-fermentation, it would keep going unless you pasteurized it.
That's a good point. And that's a word of caution. If you've got 3 kegs of this, a keg of each of this, and you wanted to blend it together and you bottled it, you could be asking for trouble.
Yeah. Often when I blend 2 beers before bottling, I'll let them sit together for a month or 2, let them find an equilibrium, let the bugs in one ferment out the sugars in the other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because some of these bugs will continue to eat the bugs that the sugars that the Saccharomyces will not eat.
Exactly. But even if you're using 2 Saccharomyces, some are more attenuative than others, and so you can risk overcarbonation. Maybe not bottle bombs, but certainly too much carbonation.
That's true. Good point. Andy's doing his own little experiment over there. He's
when my friend Dan just had some of the Alderwood smoke pour of this blend, and it's to that point it's a little bit muddy. What do you think of it? He was trying to get a little bit more body to a little bit more thickness.
Now,
just a little splash.
Now Andy has mixed pretty much equal parts of the Scandinavian Imperial Porter, the wee heavy, and the funky old ale.
Actually, it was more of a splash of the big Imperial Porter with the wee heavy, and then the funky ale. Kind of getting closer to using the Scandinavian instead of the
Berliner Weiss.
Berliner Weiss. And just a splash of it, just enough to give it a little of that raisiny character.
How'd that turn out?
It's maybe muddy, maybe a little too much, but not bad. An experiment I'll be happy to drink.
Yeah.
So what's next, Mike?
So I think that is pretty much all. Not that was necessarily a clean blend, but now we're on to the real heavy-hitting sour beers.
Ooh.
All right.
So I guess why don't we try my Flanders Pale Ale? This is already a blended beer, so I mean this is sort of an example of what can happen when you have a sour beer that you don't think is great on its own. This is a blend of a lambic I started 2 years ago that just became so aggressively funky, sour, whatever you want to call it, that it was, basically unpalatable even to me. And a Flanders Pale Ale, which was a year old at the time of blending, that just never got very sour. It was sort of boring, not really that exciting.
Oh, there it goes.
Overcarbonated.
Well, it's climbing out. It's kind of breathing.
Oh
yeah. And it had kind of a residue on the inside of the bottle.
Yeah, it's coming out. although amazingly, I poured it into a glass and it has no head retention.
It smells good.
Smells good. Getting
It was
a little cloviness at the back
I
end.
get some clove and like pine almost.
one
In a
of
good
my,
way, I want to say pine sol.
One of my cohorts just said lemon lime Gatorade.
Oh, well, there you go.
I can see
It's
some of that.
amazing. I haven't had one of these in a while. It was very different last time. It was funkier. It was sourer.
This is pretty pleasant, really.
Yeah, it's good.
I can definitely see that piney.
There's it kind of coats the tongue.
Yeah. So the original beer didn't have much sourness or much funk in that it was blended 4 parts of the sort of bland beer to 1 part of the really aggressive beer. And I think that's enough to give it some funk.
This kind of reminds me of the character of the Berliner Weiss. A little bit.
Yeah, no, it's sort of a bigger, more aggressive version of that.
Yeah.
Actually, by itself, I think this is a drinkable beer.
Yeah, this is very, very nice.
And they're both sort of similar recipes too. Both were mostly pills with about 25 or 30% wheat. This one also had some crystal malt in it, but not much.
So what's our strategy with this one, Mike?
This one, do we think it would be good with a Berliner Weiss? Do we think maybe it would be good? I have a Flanders red with blackberries. I have a Temptation clone. Or we can just leave this one as it's an example of something that's blended, move on to something else.
I think we move on. It's coming out of the bottle. Why don't you put that one in the sink? I think that one is nice by itself.
Yeah.
I don't know that. I think if you added the Berliner Weiss, I think that it's almost
They're two very similar beers.
They're
Right.
similar, yeah.
right.
And
Right.
I don't know how they would complement each other.
I mean, maybe we save that one in reserve for mixing with another beer later on.
Yeah.
Maybe
I
maybe
agree.
there's some characteristics with that one where we want to come back to it.
Okay. Why don't we go for the Temptation clone then?
All right.
And this is, I actually used the oak chip that Vinny inoculated and
sweet.
James sent me.
Oh, good. Mine's still in the basement.
That's the cap from
And this one also had some French oak that was soaked in Chardonnay by a friend of mine who worked at a winery.
So I'm very excited about this beer. Now, is there a flaw in it that you feel?
I think so. I was aiming to make Russian River Temptation. It's certainly not as sour as the original is. But I think it's certainly a very drinkable beer, pretty good balance.
So how did you use the chips?
I actually made a starter with them because they were a little bit old and I wanted to spread around a couple of beers. I think between the beers I added to and I handed out dregs to a couple of people, it's probably gone into 15 or 20 beers at this point.
That's incredible, really.
So you just put the chips into a starter wort and let them
Yep.
go?
And just let them go, and then every once in a while someone would be over and say, hey, give me some. And I'd pour some out into a bottle and cap it for them and then take it home, or I'd dump some into a bucket or a carboy.
That's a very mild beer.
Yeah.
Yes. And so we're thinking over here that either some of the Berliner Weiss to give it a little more sourness, or even some of the Flanders Pale Ale might give it at least some more complexity, some more sourness.
Yeah.
Bring it more in line with what I was aiming for in the first place, more with the Russian River version.
Yeah. No, Andy's putting a little bit of
Hold on, I'll put a drop in here and
the
see
funky old ale in there to see what happens.
Yeah, still not sour enough though.
Which beer did you add to it?
A little bit of the funky old ale in there.
Oh, the funky old ale. Well, no, I think, I mean, they both definitely, they were actually both aged with oak soaked in wine, so I mean, there's that sort of common link, and that's another way to blend is blending two beers that had the, similar aging or similar, primary yeast strains or...
That's nice.
So, and what Steve's done is he's put a splash of the Berliner Weiss in there with the Temptation.
And
That's what we were thinking.
yeah, it's very nice.
How is it?
It's good. It brought a little lemoniness to it. And I don't know, it seemed like it smoothed it out a little bit. I liked it.
I'm going to try this. I'm going to do a three. I'm going to do a three-way here with the Temptation.
It's like a Skyline chili.
That's right. I'll have mine over spaghetti. And where is the? Oh, here's the. I'm going to do the Flanders Pale Ale, the Temptation, and the Berliner Weiss.
Equal ratios?
Yeah, approximately. It's got a good head. Ooh. The aroma is very nice. Now that's
He's speechless, folks.
No, I think the Berliner Weiss may be taking over that combination, but it's very good. It's a very, very light, sourish beer, but very, very pleasant. Mm-hmm. I'd drink that all day.
Yeah. No, I'm drinking a similar blend, but more on the Berliner Weiss and the Temptation, just a splash of the Flanders Pale. And I'm still getting a lot of that Flanders Pale, that almost piney, kick.
Well, that was lovely.
Yeah, that was refreshing.
Well, it doesn't hurt that we were all big fans of the Berliner Weiss.
Mm-hmm.
Out of the chute.
Yeah. So where do we go next?
I think, what do we have left with it? We haven't opened the Blackberry. Oh, and your beer.
Yeah, I sent you a beer.
Oh, yeah.
Then there's that.
There's
We can figure out how to fix that. No, it's been a while since I've tasted that beer. It's a sour smoked porter that has a pound or two, I can't remember, of two-row that I smoked over a hickory fire for a few hours, and it was brewed with the Flanders. No, not the Flanders. The Roselaire blend from Y Yeast in the primary, and then I moved it into a bucket for a month, a plastic bucket for a month, to kind of try to get some oxygen infused in there, and then it's been in the glass carboy for a year or more, long time. So shall we? Let's try that one.
I say we open that up, and we've got numerous ways we could go with the blend.
I have to admit, I was intimidated sending you a beer, Mike, especially one that's slightly sour.
One with an infection.
Well,
the nose is very clean. I mean, it's got some chocolate to it, but definitely has that sour. But it's not very funky. It's more just clean sourness. Dan offers Tootsie Roll.
Well, James, this is nice.
It's not as sour as I had anticipated it would be after this long in the secondary.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that if I left it in the bucket longer to get more oxygen, maybe it would be a bit more sour. I don't know.
More oxygen will give you more of that vinegar character, which I'm not really sure you want in a beer like this anyway. I've found, for my personal taste, I need to add the bacteria in primary. That once you let a beer ferment out with the primary yeast, there just isn't enough sugar, for my taste, to get that sour.
Huh.
It's a lighter beer than I expected it to be.
Huh.
But unlike my old ale, it's not so thin that it's obnoxious. I mean, it's still very drinkable.
Yeah, I'm pretty pleased with this, actually.
Yeah.
I think I may bottle this soon.
So would you guys like this more sour, less sour? And we could add in some of my smoked porter to make it smokier. We could add in some of the Berliner Weiss or the Temptation clone to sour it up.
Well, I think we've had our way with the Elderwood smoked, so that's gone, I think, isn't it? Haven't we killed that?
Gone.
So that's what I would have liked. Is a bit more smoke.
We've got a little bit. We can try that for you if you like.
Yeah, do the research there and.
How are we on the wee heavy? I might like to try with a little bit of wee heavy and a little. Just a splash of each.
There's not much. The one thing that I would say is that there's not much smoke in it. There's a little bit of kind of smokiness on the mouthfeel at the end, maybe, but there's not a tremendous amount of smoke.
I just had a blend of yours and my smoked porter about 50-50, and it's not very good at all. It's like the sourness and the smoke sort of are really fighting with one another.
Huh. Well, maybe it's good that mine's not smokier. My theory on making the beer, and I say a lot of things on the show many, many times, but my theory on the beer was that in olden times, they kilned their malt with wood, so it would be smoky theoretically. Yeah. And if they aged it in wooden barrels, it would be funky.
Oh, certainly.
So that was my justification for brewing a sour smoked porter.
Yeah, no, I think you were right to hold the smoked malt in check. I mean, we've been passing a glass around, and we think that more smoked, and it's just sort of, I don't know, it just does not get along well.
Well, good.
Sort of, it gives it sort of a very sharp flavor that just isn't pleasant.
Huh. So I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to say some of the sour smoked porter with a bit of the Berliner Weiss.
That's what I'm doing right now.
What do you think?
It's nice. The sours kind of tend to just kind of blend together, maybe and muddle a little bit. They're too similar in the sour sides, I think. Because yours is not too sour, kind of refreshingly sour. Same with the Berliner Weiss.
But they kind of multiply on top of each other?
Yeah. It's okay.
So this is a case, I guess, where your beer was fine the way it was and isn't going to be necessarily improved by making it more sour or more smoky. I mean,
I tried a bit of the wee heavy with it.
How was that?
And it's quite good.
Yeah,
excellent.
Sweeten it up.
And it sweetened it up a little bit, and it added a little bit of body. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
And actually, I think I've got a little bit too much wee heavy in the little mix that we did. Maybe just back off the wee heavy a little bit, and it would have done.
Yeah, well, the blend you just did was like maybe 75 or 80% wee heavy and just a splash.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah.
It's the other way around.
Right.
Well, and the Berliner Weiss thinned it out, so it's still tasty, but not ideal, probably.
I just tried some of the wee heavy blend as well. I think that's very good. The wee heavy with your smoked porter.
And again, that because of the yeast blend, it would probably be difficult to get a lot of body in that beer, and so adding the wee heavy would add more body at the time of drinking that you couldn't get when you were actually fermenting the beer.
Right,
and
a lot more
that
stuff that the bugs would like to eat too. So
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that was how they used to do old pours, is you'd add some old, aged, possibly funky beer and some younger, fresher, sweeter beers at the time, at the bar.
That's true.
The three threads. And I mean, that's part of the reason is that if you blend them in advance, it would ferment out in just a couple of days. It would really change the character.
That's true. I'd forgotten that. The story of how the original porters were made. They were a blend.
Exactly.
I think it would be interesting to have a beer bar where you did. I mean, they do some, like at the Ginger Man in Austin. You can order certain beers blended up at the tap. But it would be interesting to get more into mixed beer drinks.
There's I don't know if it's ever opening, but there is a beer bar going in Portland, Maine that's supposed to be specialized in that. That's put on by the guy from Ebenezer's and the brewers from Destruce and Sean Paxton, who is a beer chef out on the West Coast. And they're hoping to have, I guess, like a beer blender as one of the bartenders at all times, someone who can blend a couple of different beers together, sort of on demand. Depending on what they have in stock or what they, what the customer wants.
What a great concept.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful. That'd be a lot of fun.
Oh, man.
Hopefully it happens. They've been talking about it for a while, and I'm not sure I've heard an update in maybe 6 months.
Now, the only beer that we have not opened is was it raspberry?
Blackberry.
Blackberry.
I'm really anxious to try this beer.
So this is the same Flanders Red about a year ago on the I forget what it was called, the weird yeast show that we did. We had the plain version of this. So this is that same beer but with blackberries for a while.
So was this made with that kombucha or whatever?
You're speaking.
And watch out!
Whoa! There it goes.
A little overcarbonated.
It's a live beer.
What was that stuff?
Kombucha. I thought you were speaking Klingon there for a minute.
I was.
What are you doing over there, Andy? Is it crawling out?
No, I'm just finishing this off.
He's chugging it.
He's chugging. Well, I have to say, other than drinking Black and Tans every now and then, this is about the only blended beers I've ever drank. I don't know if I've ever had any of the Firestone beers, but having said all that, this is really a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You could just have a party, which is what we're doing.
Yeah,
but,
we're working.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, yeah, that's right. IRS, we're working.
Another way of blending, which small breweries do all the time, is they blend batches of beer on the fly because their fermenters are larger than their brew pot.
Yeah.
So one way that they achieve consistency in their brewing is they make several. It takes several batches to make one fermenter full of beer. Mm-hmm. So that helps in their consistency.
And if they're short on gravity one batch, they can overshoot on gravity the next batch and make up for it intentionally.
Right. So you have had blended beers, you just don't know it.
Well, yeah.
So here we go. This is the blackberry?
Mm-hmm. It was 2 pounds of blackberries for every gallon of beer.
Fresh blackberries?
Fresh blackberries. I froze them for about 24 hours beforehand just to pop the cell walls.
In the secondary?
Yes, in the secondary, I left them in there for a couple of months.
Ooh.
And the regular Flanders Red is a little bit tame. It's not too sour. I think the blackberries are great because they don't really taste that distinct. It's, if you were drinking this, you might not even realize it was fruit. It's fruity, but it could be bread. It could be the yeast.
Yeah. Ooh, that's a pucker.
Yeah, it is.
That's a pucker fest. This would be a good one to mix with, say, one of the big ones, like the Wee Heavy or something, or the Scandinavian Imperial Porter.
Exactly. Do you guys have either of those left?
Yes, we do. We have both.
Excellent. I'd say the Wee Heavy is probably the place to go, and we're thinking a lower amount of the Wee Heavy, maybe 3/4 Flanders Red or a third Wee Heavy.
That definitely darkens it up. That turns it from a blackberry to more of a raisin kind of a thing.
Well, that's good.
I think the sourness still comes through. It's got a little bit more body, a little bit more sweetness.
Are you familiar with the? Is it Frambozen from New Belgium?
I think I had it once when I was out there a couple years ago, but they don't make it out this far.
What I'm tasting is kind of like a sour Frambozen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Although that's
a little bit
raspberries,
malty. Well, it's raspberries and blackberries are pretty closely related.
Yeah.
Yeah, just imagine if you had like Frambozen and La Folie.
Mm-hmm.
So not everybody out there is going to have as interesting a library of beers to mix together.
Well, there's also nothing wrong with picking up a couple of commercial beers, either to mix with each other or to mix with your home brews.
That's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point.
Or getting a couple of friends together. Like you did, sending us one of your beers, and then trying to mix it. If you've got a couple of friends, everybody bring a couple of home brews, and see what works.
Heavy mixer.
Yeah.
Well, this again has been a blast, Mike. I've looked forward to this for a very long time, and I had to wrap your beers in my refrigerator in black plastic so no one would touch them. So
glad they all made it.
So this has been another amazing show, and it makes me wonder what we're going to do next to top it.
We'll see. I have various things in the works, but
I'm still looking for the English hop episode. Remember we did the American hop episode.
That's right, the English hop experiments. Yeah. Well, and I will put a link as usual to your blog, madfermentationist.blogspot.com. Is that right?
That's great. And I'll have links up to all the recipes that we tried here tonight.
Wow. Well, thanks, Mike.
Thanks, James, as always.
Well, thanks again to Mike Tonsmeire and everybody on his end of the conversation there in Washington, D.C. Also, thanks to Steve and Andy for playing along. And, by the way, after the blending session, I shared an 11-year-old espresso porter with them that I'd made way back when. It was the last surviving beer from a batch that won a contest for me a decade ago, back in 1998. And it was still very good. So it held up very well over the years. And I was just wanting a good time to have that, and that was a good time. Appreciate everybody getting together on that one, and I hope that you got some good strategies out of that for blending your own beers. It's a lot of fun. Get together your homebrew club or your friends and try it. You may be surprised. Remember, we've got the Brewer's Logbook and our new Basic Winemaking Introduction to Wine Kits DVD out there on our online store. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to james@basicbrewing.com, or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. And please don't forget to make sure that your address is correct, your email address is correct. You can check out our other DVDs, our low-tech lagering and decoction mashing DVD, where you can see Steve do a single-step decoction mash. And you can follow me doing a lager fermentation, where I don't use a dedicated chest freezer. There are also other DVDs, Basic Brewing Introduction to Extract Home Brewing, where we walk you through the extract brewing process step by step from boiling to bottling. And in Basic Brewing Stepping into All Grain, we take you through the all grain process from milling your grain to collecting your wort. We got the combo deals out there to save you a few bucks if you want to buy more than one DVD at a time. And you can see a listing of the fine folks across the country who sell our DVDs on basicbrewing.com. And if there isn't a vendor in your area, you can order it online in our online shop at basicbrewingshop.com. We got the shirts and different colors. Thanks to everybody who's continued to click on our Amazon.com link. We appreciate the support. Lots of cameras this time. Lots of people getting cameras for Christmas. Our featured products this week that were purchased through the link are RPS Waterbed Patch Kit. Oops. And Manhattan Toy Love Bug Outfit for baby Stella. Thanks again, everybody. And remember, I can't tell who bought what, so no worries there. Just click on the Amazon.com logo on our site the next time you feel like Amazon shopping. And we appreciate your support. And we also have an associate link to the Apple Store on the site as well. That's all until next week, everybody. Until then, thanks for listening. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dodson down there in Austin, Texas. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long.